This call is now being recorded.
This is Global Tellink. You have a prepaid call from
Silas Johnson.
an inmate at the Centinela State Prison, Centinela, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tellink.
All right, so I want to go ahead and welcome you to the podcast. And the name of the podcast is You Have a Collect Call From, which I believe a lot of our friends and families and loved ones are familiar with. It's synonymous with incarceration. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and give us like a brief description of where you're at and what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. My name is Silas M. Johnson. I'm 45 years old. I'm from Pacoima, California. I've been incarcerated for 22 and a half years, and I'm serving a 24-to-life sentence for first-degree robbery and second-degree murder.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I want to go ahead and start off by, can you go ahead and share some of your early childhood and where your family came from? Were they originally from California, or did they come from another part of the country?
Yeah, sure. My grandparents from the South. My paternal and maternal grandparents are from the South, originated from the South, and migrated out here to the West Coast. My parents are from Los Angeles, and I grew up in Los Angeles and in San Fernando Valley.
And can you tell me about your earliest childhood memory?
My earliest childhood memory, when I was small, we lived in the jungles.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Probably one of my earliest memories when my parents were married is me falling into a pool. We lived on Poco in August, and I fell into a pool, and nobody was around. And I was in there for probably about 30 seconds, and my dad reached his hand in there and pulled me out. It's probably one of my earliest memories as a kid. I was probably like 3 or 4.
And at that age, were you scared, or what kind of reaction did you have? Did you know that you were in danger once you fell into that pool? What was your first instinct to do after you fell into the pool?
I was just flopping around, panicking, and my dad, he's always been my hero my whole life. So, like, it was kind of apt for him to snatch me out of there, because he was like my superhero my whole life. So, I always felt safe around him anywhere we went. And, like, he pulled me out, and it was just like, okay, everything's cool, he's got me.
And do you remember if your mom was worried, or was she happy once your dad pulled you out, or was she around when the incident happened?
No, I think she was in an apartment building. I don't think she actually saw. I was just walking and went too close and just fell in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know if he told my mom actually that happened.
So early life, how would you say your childhood was growing up? Because I'm assuming your parents were together up until the incident.
Yeah. My folks got divorced. Separated. My folks separated when it was around probably 4 or 5, and I spent the early years of my childhood back and forth between my mother and father in the West LA area with my mother, and the San Fernando Valley, Pacoima, with my dad. And I pretty much went back and forth until my mother moved to Las Vegas around 85, I guess, 85 after the 84 Olympics, and I moved with my mother out in Las Vegas, and there was still a little bit back and forth, but I spent like 3 solid years as a child in Las Vegas during the 80s.
And do you remember, at that age, could you comprehend when your parents sat you down and explained to you that they were going to be separating, or was there even a conversation like that at that age?
There was. I remember going to court and being asked who I wanted to live with, and pretty much after that, it was just like, both of them were pretty consistent. So while they were both in the LA area, so it was pretty much just like a back and forth thing. I spent time both places, with my grandparents, both places, and they did a good job early on, but after my mother moved, things kind of like fell apart as far as the communication and me being able to frequent back and forth between my mother and father's house.
Okay. And then you mentioned earlier on that you spent 3 years out in Las Vegas. What changed that did you end up leaving Las Vegas after the 3 years? What was it that transpired during that time?
I was out in Las Vegas with my mother and her boyfriend, and I went through some issues with their boyfriend. He became abusive to my older brother and I, and so we went through that, and there was just a lot of instability, moving around. My mom, she always worked, and she worked hard and tried to make it work, but it was just a lot of conflict in the home, and eventually I ended up moving back with my dad for good around age 12.
And when you moved back to California at age 12, what part of the city did you end up in?
I moved back to Panorama City, actually, in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay, in this area, during this time, or even probably now, it's predominantly Hispanic or Latino. How did you fit in that culture?
It was a mix. It was a mix. I mean, I guess it was predominantly Latino, but back then, the whole gang thing and like the whole racial strife, it wasn't like it's grown to be now. So, I mean, I grew up with a lot of Mexican friends, and there were a lot of black kids that I grew up with. So it was, it was earlier in my childhood, say 13, 12, 13, 14, there were incidents, but it wasn't bad. The relations were good enough to where there was communication, and, I had buddies, and, it was a pretty cool time.
So it's safe to say that during those times, people weren't looking at your skin color, or you weren't looking at the next person's skin color, and maybe it was possible for you to go over to one of their houses, or they could come over to your house, and there wouldn't be any backlash if you guys mingled.
Nah. My buddies, my best friend, when I was in the valley, going back and forth, when I was like in the 4th grade, was Alex. He's my best friend, and he was Mexican, and his mom was Paisa, and she didn't know a lick of English, and I used to spend nights at his house. He spent nights at my house, and I mean, all the way up until like 12 or 13 when I started junior high school, like we were buddies. Like I knew he was Mexican, but it wasn't like he was my friend.
Yeah, it didn't matter during those years, right? Yeah, it was irrelevant. Right. It didn't have a factor in your friendship. During those times when you spent time in his house, did you ever pick up any Spanish?
A little bit. Actually, my grandfather knew a little bit of Spanish. He served he was in the Navy during World War II. He had a lot of Mexican buddies, so he knew a little bit of Spanish. So it was kind of a trip when I would come home. He would say something to me in Spanish and kind of quiz me, being that hey, you spend every day over at your friend's house, and he's Mexican and they speak Spanish, so you got to pick up something. So he used to say little things to me in Spanish.
With your friendship with Alex, do you have a memory that you could share with us that's a memory that just stands out of just being happy and joy with your
This
friends?
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Probably the most prominent memory is just us playing Transformers. This is back in 86, 87. And they had a cartoon, Transformers the movie, that came out around that time, and we went to go see it together. And it was just like the coolest thing in the world, man. And he had his mom had bought him, I had mine, and my dad had bought me, and we were living in Northridge at the time. And just going out in the apartment and just playing with our Transformers and running around and just being kids, man. That's probably the best memories that I have back then.
I'm gonna bring up a question that just popped in my head, and it's coming out of left field and has nothing to do with what we're speaking about right now. But do you remember around those years? I'm guessing 85, 86, and Richard Ramirez was running around L.A. terrorizing the whole city. Do you recall that?
I mean, in retrospect, yeah, but as a child, I don't remember hearing anything about it.
Okay, I remember as a kid, I was terrified. I remember my sister sleeping with a butcher knife under her pillow, and I was maybe in fifth grade. Fifth grade, sorry, kindergarten. I was 5 years old, and for some reason that just popped into my head. But anyhow, I digressed. So you get to what, middle school, and things start changing?
Probably about middle school. I was getting pretty good grades. I was getting bused out to Lawrence Junior High School in Chatsworth. Fun fact, I actually went to Lawrence Junior High with Candace Cameron Virgin from Full House. I actually went to school with her. So I went to school in a pretty predominantly white neighborhood, and it's a good school.
And for those of, sorry, my apologies. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that's when I kind of started to get a little mischievous.
Okay. And for those of us that are not aware who she is, which character did she play in Full House?
I think she would be Jessie.
Jessie, okay. So she would be
the eldest daughter.
The eldest daughter. Okay, yeah, and I'm familiar with her. Grew up watching Full House as a kid. So what kind of activities were you getting into at that age?
Football all day long. Football, and just basketball, running around with my best friends, Akua and Trinell, Jermaine, and we just played football and that was just, and basketball, and that was just it. That was it every day at school, every day after school. That was just what we did.
And I have two questions. So during that time, how were you doing academically in school, and being into sports? Did that teach you any type of discipline?
I can't say that it taught me any discipline. I think that my personality at that.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
For a long time after was the fact that I had been moved around so much. I was used to so much instability that I really didn't buckle down any place I went and actually give 100% of myself, because I was always waiting to leave again. So discipline really wasn't my strong suit, because my life to that point had been so erratic and unstable.
That makes sense. And what was your first memory of getting in trouble or getting involved or coming across the law?
The first time I was ever arrested was September 1993, I actually sold crack cocaine to an LAPD undercover out of the van.